Hey everybody, Mazer here, and today we're looking at The Suffering. The Suffering is an action horror game published by Midway in 2004 for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. It was described as Devil May Cry meets Resident Evil, and was inspired by several different horror movies including The Shining, Blair Witch Project, and The Ring. In The Suffering, you play as Torque, a death row inmate convicted of murdering his wife and kids. You are escorted to the island prison of Carnet that has its own grisly history. Shortly after being locked up, you experience an earthquake that rocks the prison and unleashes a legion of unholy abominations onto the island. Now you must try to escape while choosing to help or hinder others along the way. Right away, what separates The Suffering from other horror games of the time is the style. This is not a survival horror. This is an action horror. You are given a large variety of weapons, plenty of ammunition, and are encouraged to decimate your enemies as opposed to hiding from them. Furthermore, Torque is not your ordinary protagonist. It is established early on that he is not a good person and has indeed murdered people in the past. However, what is not made clear is if he is truly responsible for the death of his family. This is decided upon by the morality system that monitors how you treat others during your escape. Killing leads to a negative karma, while helping leads to positive. There is a third option, however, which is leaving them alone to their own devices, which provides neutral karma. As expected, these choices affect the ending of the game. The gameplay itself is pretty solid for the time. Running, shooting, and dodging your enemies is easy and satisfying. Switching between weapons is done with the arrow buttons and can somewhat be a hassle as it forces you to take your thumb off the joystick, which stops you from moving. Luckily, the enemies are not as aggressive to make this a life or death choice, so it balances out. The game can also be played completely in first person, which actually comes in handy quite often, as the corridors get crowded pretty easily. Switching to first person allows for more precise aiming while keeping a better eye on your environment. Jumping is really the only negative. Like most third-person games of the time, jumping is very stiff and has led me to a lot of cheap deaths when I wasn't being too careful. The presentation is also well done. The prison has a lot of detail for the time, and each new area feels different than the last. Torque himself looks pretty good, as do a few of the more important side characters. However, it is the enemy design that really steals the show. Each enemy is based off a different style of execution. They all convey a very Clive Barker Lovecraftian style that screams creativity. And they don't always reuse the same model over and over again. Several of the enemies actually have different appearances, making them look more diverse instead of carbon copies of themselves. I cannot stress how much I love the enemy designs. They are some of the most creative creatures I've ever seen in a horror game, and I honestly look forward to seeing what kind of monstrosity I would be introduced to next. The game is pretty fair when it comes to difficulty. You're provided with more than enough healing items and ammunition to get through the levels, and the enemies themselves are pretty easy enough to kill on their own. It is when they're in groups that gives the game a proper challenge. Boss battles are usually a mixture of action and puzzle, and again are done in a way that gives players plenty of time to figure out the solution without having to worry about dying over and over and over again. Again, a good challenge, but done fairly. The game is not flawless, however. There are quite a few glitches I ran into, including some characters getting stuck in the environment to the point where I had to kill them in order to progress, and this meant I received negative karma because I had to basically fix a glitch that happened in the game. Falling from small heights can also cause an insta-death. It's really annoying but not game-breaking, as The Suffering does allow you to save anytime and has plenty of checkpoints along the way. Those issues, however, are not enough to ruin your overall experience. The game is fantastic. The sound design, the style, the gameplay, it all comes together for a wonderfully entertaining experience. I cannot recommend The Suffering enough. Luckily, you can still find this game on GOG.com for about $10, and if you want a physical copy, the PS2 version still sells at certain stores for between $15 to $20 depending on where you go. Please give this game a chance. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a quick little review of The Suffering for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. I am Mazer. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.